Hi, I'm Urban, and I'm here to share a story that has haunted me for years. A story that's about my family, or at least the family I thought I knew. It's a story about secrets, lost memories, and a chilling discovery that made me question everything I believed about myself. Before we dive in, I want to ask, have you ever felt like something was just off? Maybe you've looked at a family photo and thought, who is that person? Or had a moment where you felt like an outsider in your own home. If so, you might just relate to my story. It all started earlier this year when I lost my grandmother. She was 80 years old, and her passing left a void in our family. But she didn't leave us alone. My aunt, who has an intellectual disability, came to live with us. My aunt is a beautiful soul. She's cheerful, playful, and incredibly innocent. A 4-year-old in an adult's body. Her disability stemmed from meningitis, which robbed her of the opportunity to grow into an independent adult. She now lives with me, a 24-year-old musician, and my mother. At first, life was normal, or at least as normal as life can be when you're dealing with grief and adjusting to new family dynamics. But as the days went on, little things started to nag at me. I've always had this strange feeling, a lingering doubt about my identity. I can't remember anything before the age of 7. Sure, I have photos and videos of my early childhood, but when I look at them, I don't see me. The child in those images feels like a stranger. My older sister, who's just 2 years older than me, appears in many of these photos. She's always there, smiling next to this child I'm supposed to believe is me. But the facial features, the hairline, even the expressions, they don't match who I know myself to be. A few months ago, I hung up an old photo of my sister and me from preschool on our living room wall. It was a sweet picture, or so I thought. But when my mom and sister saw it, their reactions were strange. Both of them froze when they saw the picture. My mom's face fell, and she mumbled something like, "Why is this here?" My sister didn't say much either, just stared at the photo with a gloomy expression. At the time, I didn't think much of it. But now, looking back, I wonder, were they reacting to the photo itself, or to the fact that I had put it on display? You see, my family has always avoided watching old VHS tapes. My mom says they remind her of her bad marriage to my father. But maybe, just maybe, they remind her of something else. Here's where things get even stranger. My aunt has a sharp memory when it comes to recognizing people in photos, even from decades ago. So one day I decided to test her. I pointed to that same preschool photo and asked her, "Who's this?" She immediately recognized my sister. Then I asked, "And who's this boy next to her?" Her response chilled me to the bone. She said, "Baby." I laughed nervously and asked again, "No, really, who is it?" She just repeated, "Baby, he's gone." Now, my aunt's disability means she sometimes speaks in simple terms, but she's also surprisingly perceptive. Was she trying to tell me something? That night, I couldn't sleep. I started to think about all the little details that had never quite added up. My mom once told me she had a miscarriage before having my sister. But what if that wasn't true? What if she actually gave birth to a child who didn't survive, or worse, a child who was taken away? What if that child was the boy in the photo? I began to piece together a theory, one that I'm almost too afraid to say out loud. What if my parents had 3 children? My sister, a firstborn son, and me. What if something terrible happened to that firstborn son? And here's the most terrifying question of all. What if I'm not their biological child at all? Driven by my growing paranoia, I decided to confront the past. One night, while my mom was out, I dug through an old box of VHS tapes. I found one labeled 199X Kids. I popped it into the player, heart pounding. The screen flickered to life, and there they were, my sister, my mom, and a boy. A boy who looked just like the child in the photo. He was laughing, playing, and calling my mom, Mama. When my mom got home, I confronted her. I told her everything, my doubts, my memories, or lack thereof, and what my aunt had said. First, she denied it all, but as I pressed her, tears welled up in her eyes. Finally, she whispered, "You don't understand. We did what we had to do. I still don't know the full story. Was there a tragic accident? A secret adoption? Or something even darker? What I do know is this: families are complicated, and the truth isn't always what it seems. So, what do you think? Am I reading too much into this? Or is there something my family has been hiding from me all these years? If you've ever uncovered a family secret, or have your own theories about what might have happened, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Together, maybe we can uncover the truth. Jake didn't just stumble upon the game Midnight Calls. A week ago, he received an email from an unknown source with the subject line, "Do you want to play?" Inside the email was a link without any explanation. Jake, curious and adventurous by nature, clicked the link without thinking. The website that opened contained only one line: "The game begins when you choose." From then on, Jake became obsessed. He searched for everything about the game, from anonymous forums to horror stories on Reddit. People warned him that this was no joke. Some people said they had tried it and never felt safe in their own homes again. Jake didn't care. He wanted to test his fate. I initially refused to join, but Jake kept pressing. "Do you want to live in boredom forever? This could be your chance to change your life." Little did I know that he chose me for a reason. The game requires 2 people. As the countdown on the app reached 0, the air in the room felt compressed. The sounds of traffic outside suddenly quieted, as if they had never existed. Suddenly, the candles on the table burned brighter, a red glow replacing the soft yellow of the original flame. The first message appeared on the screen: "Welcome to the game. Follow the rules or pay the price." Jake smiled, but I could tell his smile was strained. We pressed yes, and the room suddenly became so cold I could see my breath. The first time Jake got the call, the voice on the other end wasn't a whisper, but a mumble in a language we didn't understand. But when he answered, Jake's candle seemed to shrink, as if it were drained of energy. When it was my turn, the voice not only called my name, but also brought up memories I didn't want anyone to know. "Do you remember when you were 15, in the woods behind the house?" it asked, sending a chill down my spine. "Don't listen to it," Jake whispered, but his eyes were no longer focused on me. They were focused on a dark corner of the room. The shadows on the walls were no longer static. They danced and intertwined, forming distorted shapes. For a moment, I swore I saw the outline of a man with glowing red eyes standing right behind Jake. I tried to warn him, but Jake just shook his head. "You're imagining things," he said, his voice no longer Jake's at all. The next message appeared on my phone: "Rule 7. Protect the candle at all costs. Without it, you are theirs." It began to feel like the candle was the only thing keeping us grounded in the real world. But the shadows were getting thicker, and the whispering grew louder. As Jake tried to leave the room to find more candles, I held him back. "You're not going anywhere. This is part of the game." "Don't believe me," Jake said, his voice low and full of malice. "You're playing too, and are you sure you're still in one piece?" The next message on my phone froze me. "The Jake you know is gone. You are next." Jake, or whatever was in his body, suddenly burst out laughing. "You don't know what I saw," he said, his voice turning into a growl. While Jake tried to extinguish my candle, I searched my phone, trying to access the forum where he had found the game. One post in particular gave me chills. "If you are reading this, you are too late. The game is not simply a challenge. It is a ritual to call forth entities from the other world. They do not just take you, they turn you into one of them." I realized that Jake was not the first to play this game. Those who had come before had not only lost, they had been transformed, becoming conduits for the entities to enter the real world. My candle began to burn out no matter how hard I tried to protect it. Jake, or whatever he was, stepped toward me with a twisted smile. "This is the end, my friend." I remembered the last rule: don't let him leave. I had no choice. I had to break his candle to keep the entity in the room, but doing so would mean I would be trapped with it. I smashed Jake's candle, and immediately, The space around us collapsed, leaving me in complete darkness. When I woke up, I found myself lying in bed, the room glowing in the morning light. Jake was gone. My phone no longer had the Midnight Calls app, but the screen kept displaying a single message: "See you soon." Every night at 12 o'clock, my phone vibrated. I never dared to answer, but I knew that if I kept refusing, the entity would come to me in some other way. And now, every time I looked in the mirror, I saw Jake, standing there with a devilish smile. I discovered that the game had never ended. The darkness still haunted me, and in a strange dream, I realized that I was not avoiding the game, but I had become a part of it. I was the one who sent the next invitation. There are things you never want to pass on to the next generation. For my family, it wasn't a family heirloom, a family recipe, or even a genetic disease. What we passed on was darkness, a darkness that could not be explained, avoided, and ended. This is the story of a curse that has lasted for generations in my family. A curse of dreams that were not yours, of feelings that no one else could understand. A curse that took away the people I loved the most, and now it has become a part of me. When I was a kid, I thought my family was just special. We had a strange, almost telepathic way of communicating. I could tell my dad about the people he met at work, even though he was hundreds of miles away. My mom knew what I was doing, even when I tried to hide it. The first time I realized this wasn't a blessing, but a curse, was when I was 16. It was the night I snuck out to go to a party with some friends. I remember my mom calling me in the middle of the night, her voice so cold I felt my blood stop. "I told you," she said, her voice hushed but authoritative. "Don't go with those two. They drink cheap beer and bring people you shouldn't be hanging out with." I froze. How could she know? She didn't just guess. She told exactly what happened, including details that only my friend and I knew. But the scariest stories always belonged to the older generation. My grandfather used to tell of his dreams. No, not his dreams, his father's. My great-grandfather was a hero in World War II, but my grandfather, who had never fought, lived as if he had just returned from the battlefield. "Do you know what it feels like to hear a mother scream as her child dies in her arms?" He used to ask. His eyes glazed over as if he were seeing something that was not real. That scream never left. I didn't mean it. They shouldn't have been there. It was the Germans' fault. I think I checked. On nights like that, he would wake up with tears streaming down his face, his hands shaking as if he had just held a gun. Those memories weren't his, but he carried them with him all his life, as if a part of him had died in battles he had never fought. I thought I was used to the darkness in my family, but then it came in the cruelest way through my daughter, Sarah. Sarah was the light of my life. At 4 years old, she was full of energy, running around as if the world were her playground. But the world was not so safe. That day, Sarah was playing in the field behind my father's house. She didn't know how to identify a copperhead. I heard her scream, a scream that tore at my soul. We rushed her to the hospital in desperation. The doctors said we were lucky the venom hadn't spread far. But even as they reassured me, I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness was lurking, waiting for an opportunity to strike. That night, as Sarah slept under the effects of the drugs, I had my first dream. In my dream, I was running through the jungle, all huge and overwhelming. I could hear running water, but I couldn't make out where I was. I felt a cold chill run through my bones as I stumbled into a stream. I woke up, feeling a sharp pain on my arm, right where Sarah had been bitten. Sarah woke up too. "Daddy, turn on the light." "I'm scared." I turned on the light, held her little hand tightly, and promised, "Nothing can hurt you while you're here." I didn't know I was lying. Sarah didn't make it. The doctors called it an allergic reaction, a sudden event they couldn't explain. But I knew better. I'd seen the darkness take her soul. The funeral was a living nightmare. The tiny coffin, covered with pictures of her favorite cartoon characters, felt like it was being ripped apart from the inside. That night, the dream returned. My dreams were no longer familiar. I was trapped in darkness now, a cold, overwhelming darkness with no escape. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I only felt the presence of something watching, waiting. I was no longer just a spectator. I was part of the darkness. The dreams continued, each night more terrifying. I saw Sarah, but not the innocent little girl I had known. Her eyes were empty, her voice distorted. "Daddy, turn on the light." Now I live in my own fear. I don't know if I can escape this darkness, but I know one thing for sure. The darkness is not just for me. It is a part of my family, and it will continue to haunt the next generation, unless I find a way to stop it. I just wish I could turn on a light, and not for me, but for Sarah, so she doesn't have to be afraid of the dark anymore. This is not a simple story about loss. It is a warning that sometimes the things we carry are not only ours. And when the darkness comes, you must be ready to face it. So, have you ever felt the darkness? Or are you part of it without even knowing it?
Thanks for listening to today's story. Let us know what you think. If you want to hear more scary stories, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode when we upload it. We'll always be here and welcome you.